Rats and mice are an age-old problem. Throughout man's history, these cunning pests have caused untold damage to crops, stored food and property, and posed a constant threat to health. Today, in spite of many and varied attempts at control, they continue to be a menace to mankind. Rats and mice are rodents, a name derived from the Latin meaning to gnaw. With the exception of man, they are the most successful mammals on Earth. This remarkable success is reflected in their global distribution. The most important pest species originated in Asia, and over the centuries have spread with man by land and by sea as a result of human exploration, migration, and international trade. But why are these animals so successful, and why is it necessary to control them? The key to the remarkable success of rats and mice lies in their lack of specialization, allowing them to adapt to almost every environment. They're intelligent animals, and most senses are very well developed. Their keen sense of smell helps in locating food, and given the opportunity, they'll select a nutritionally balanced diet. Touch and hearing are also well developed. Although their vision is relatively poor and they're apparently colorblind, they can recognize simple shapes, detect motion even in very dim light, and memorize their surroundings. They're remarkably agile mammals, able to jump vertically and horizontally for more than a meter, climb vertical surfaces, and fall from great heights without serious injury. They're reasonably good swimmers, which allows them to cross stretches of open water, live in sewer systems, or even enter domestic premises via the water traps in sanitary units. Another important reason for the rodents' success is their capacity for explosive population growth. Although they only live for about a year, rats may have up to 10 litters during their lifetime, with an average of 8 young per litter. They reach sexual maturity only 60 days after birth, so under ideal conditions, several thousand new individuals can result from a single pair within 1 year. This potential for rapid population growth has important practical implications, because survivors of inefficient control operations are able quickly to return an infestation to its original level. Rodents eat about 10% of their body weight of food each day. They're omnivorous, but generally prefer cereals or cereal-based products. It's their feeding behavior which brings them into direct conflict with man. Although reliable information on losses is often lacking, it has been estimated that 130 million people could be fed each year with the food destroyed by the world's rat population. In addition to direct losses of stored food in domestic and industrial premises, farms, stores and warehouses, further and often economically more important losses result from damage to packaging and the contamination of food with droppings, urine and hair. Particularly in the warmer regions of the world, rodents also damage a variety of field and plantation crops, including maize, rice and sugarcane, oil palm, and cocoa. Rats have 2 pairs of strong, well-developed front teeth, known as incisors, which grow throughout their lives. They're compulsive gnawers and will attack most natural and man-made materials, including wood, soft metals, and plastics. Many fires, for which the cause is not apparent, are believed to be the result of rodent damage. Rodents are also a threat to health because they're known to carry many important diseases affecting both man and domestic animals. Perhaps the best known of these is the plague or Black Death carried by the rat flea. Other diseases are transmitted via saliva and excreta, including various forms of bacterial food poisoning, or the viral diseases choriomeningitis and the often fatal Lassa fever. The rickettsial disease murine typhus is transmitted from rats to man by fleas. Rats also carry protozoal, fungal, and helminthic diseases. Throughout man's history, many different methods have been devised to control rodents, and these can, for convenience, be divided into two broad categories: non-chemical and chemical methods. Perhaps the best-known non-chemical method of control involves the use of traps. This method can be effective in controlling low infestations, but in general requires considerable expertise. Other similar methods include the use of predators, cultural practices such as bounty schemes, biological control, improved sanitation, and rodent proofing. Although many of these practices have a role to play in reducing the risk of infestation, there is virtually no case of effective control using non-chemical methods. Chemical methods include a variety of options, by far the most effective being baiting with an anticoagulant rodenticide such as Storm. Storm is the name for the new, highly potent, single-feed anticoagulant rodenticide invented by Shell Research. Synthesized in the laboratory by Shell chemists, Storm was selected from numerous candidate compounds as providing the best combination of features demanded by today's increasingly discriminating user. Storm has been extensively tested in many laboratories throughout the world, using well-established procedures to confirm both its efficacy and acceptability in a bait formulation to a wide range of pest rodents, including those resistant to other anticoagulant rodenticides. This high efficacy means that, unlike most other rodenticides, a lethal dose is absorbed following the consumption of bait containing only 50 parts per million of the active ingredient as part of a daily feed. Storm may therefore be described as a single-feed rodenticide. The two essential features, efficacy and good palatability, have been retained in the development of commercial bait formulations. Storm has been extensively tested in field trials and has given excellent rodent control under a variety of climatic conditions against different pest species in a wide range of uses, including farms, domestic and industrial premises, plantation crops such as oil palm, and field crops such as rice and sugarcane. These numerous field trials have shown that the advantages of using Storm are its good palatability in a variety of bait formulations, which, combined with the delayed onset of any ill effects, means that there is no bait shyness. Storm is a very potent rodenticide, active against both rats and mice, including those resistant to other products. A lethal dose can be delivered following the consumption of bait as only a part of one day's feed, so Storm is an effective single-feed rodenticide. This feature makes it suitable for the more cost-effective treatment referred to as pulse baiting. Storm is supplied as easy-to-use formulations. The term pulse baiting is an important feature of using Storm and merits further explanation. In general, the amount of any rodenticide bait required to achieve effective control depends on several factors, including the pest species involved, the nature of the problem, and the extent and severity of the infestation. There are two quite different ways a rodenticide bait can be used depending on the product's potency. The traditional method of controlling rodent infestations using less potent anticoagulant rodenticides, such as warfarin, uses surplus or unrestricted baiting. Because of its lower potency, a lot of warfarin, represented here as a whole wheat bait, has to be laid on the site. To be effective, this bait must be eaten by the rats over a period of several consecutive days. Bait points need to be replenished at regular intervals, often every 2 to 3 days, so that they do not become exhausted. The replenishing of eaten bait must continue until no more bait is taken by the rats, usually for a period of 3 to 4 weeks, depending upon the severity of the infestation. The site is treated with an amount of bait in excess of the rat population's total food requirements, hence the term surplus baiting. The need to make numerous visits to the site also increases the cost of the treatment because it involves a high labour input. Storm bait has the potency to kill rats and mice following a single feed. To take full advantage of this outstanding potency, a site is treated with the same number of bait points, represented here as blue blocks, but the quantity of bait laid, and therefore eaten by the rats, is significantly less. The period between replenishing the eaten bait is extended from 2 to 3 days using warfarin to 7 to 10 days using Storm. This significantly reduces the main cost element of any rodent control campaign, labour. In addition to being more cost-effective, pulse baiting minimises the risk to non-target animals because less bait is available for a shorter period of time. All bait should be removed from the site at the end of treatment. The most important pest species are referred to collectively as commensal rodents because they share man's food and shelter. 3 species have a worldwide distribution. They are Rattus norvegicus, the common brown or Norway rat, often described as the most destructive mammal on Earth; Rattus rattus, the ship, roof or black rat, notorious as the carrier of the dreaded bubonic plague; and Mus musculus, the house mouse, the most widely distributed of the commensal rodents. In some parts of the world, other local commensal species such as the bandicoot rat may be economically more important. The advantages of using Storm can best be illustrated by showing it in actual use. Storm bait has been successfully used to control commensal rodents in many different situations, including domestic and industrial premises, warehouses and farms. Whatever the particular use, the general principles involved are the same and can be well illustrated by showing how to control a typical farm infestation. Before an effective campaign of eradication can be carried out, the nature and extent of the infestation must first be established by carefully surveying the site. Rodents are nocturnal and tend to be most active just after sunset. Although they're rarely seen, there are many signs of their presence. Their burrows are usually found along the outside walls of buildings or other substantial structures which offer shelter. Rats are creatures of habit and tend to use well-established pathways or runs to their feeding areas. Following runs for their entire course will help to show where rodents are living and feeding. Droppings are often the most frequent sign of rodent activity. They're commonly observed along runways, in sheltered areas, or where the rodents feed. Fresh droppings are shiny and moist, and their size and shape are an aid to identification of the species involved. Rodents prefer sheltered places, and it's important to explore dark corners and areas where rubbish or seldom used materials have accumulated. Rats are good swimmers, and open or damaged drains can offer pathways for movement between buildings. Water is rarely in short supply in and around buildings, and rats need to drink every day, unlike mice which do not. In addition to inspecting food sources for damage, areas around potential water sources should be carefully examined for signs of activity, including rodent footprints in muddy areas. Structural damage to buildings is an obvious sign of rodent activity. The characteristic tooth marks are easily seen. The initial survey of the infested site should then be used to establish a barrier of bait points between the nesting and feeding areas. This plan shows the distribution of bait points on a mixed farm heavily infested with rats. The location of baited holes is marked in orange, other bait points in blue. Bait points are more densely laid in areas of high activity, such as around and within animal feed stores. In heavy infestations, bait points may be as little as 5 meters apart. Storm blocks should be stored in their original, tightly closed containers in a safe place under lock and key. Directions for safe and effective use of the product are given on the label, and this should be studied carefully before laying the blocks. Storm blocks are less prone to attack by insects and mold than conventional loose grain bait. It is also more convenient to handle in measured doses and less attractive to some non-target animals, particularly birds. When carrying out a treatment, care should be taken to reduce the risk of children and non-target species having access to the blocks. Typical baiting positions include holes. 1 or 2 blocks should be placed in active holes during each visit.